welcome. Today is Wednesday of Holy Week, and from what I understand, there's not a whole lot that scholars and tradition wants to say about Wednesday. It's almost, as I've suggested, Silent Wednesday. However, there are a few things that are going on. Probably Jesus is in Bethany, and there's all kinds of conjecture as to what he's up to on Wednesday of Holy Week, anticipating his suffering in the cross and his burial, and then his faith in the resurrection. And so, probably in Bethany, the anointing of Jesus' feet may very well be a part of it is a part of the traditional readings. This may be the day on which Judas um, bargains uh, with the leaders of Israel for Jesus' life. 30 pieces of silver, the price of a slave. And so there's lots of things that we don't know for sure, and several people have, counseled us well, I think, to be careful about saying anything too um, absolute about what happened on Wednesday. But I want to spend a little bit of time, just a few minutes. And by the way, let me mention this. I intended to do this early in the week. One of the things that I would like to add, and this came from a good friend of mine who she suggested that our small church would love to pray for uh, any needs that you might have. And so, if you want to, in the comments, just leave a prayer need or something you're curious about, maybe something I say here or whatever, a praise that you want to leave with us, feel free to do that, and if it's a prayer request, we'll pray about that. And if you touch on something I may be able to clarify, I'll be glad to do that. So, Judas, there is a famous statement that says that in the moment of crisis, we will not rise to the occasion, but we will default to our training, And I think that's something that we need to realize, that with Judas, that Judas's betrayal of Jesus, however that works out in terms of it being prophesied that one would betray the Messiah into the hands of the pagan soldiers and all of that. However we work all that out, Judas has prepared for this moment. We know he was dipping into Jesus' wallet, right? He's kind of the treasury of the group. We know that when expensive ointment was used to wash Jesus' feet by Mary, he complained about it. He was concerned about the money, but not because he was concerned with money, but because he obviously was one that wanted to benefit from Jesus, probably Jesus' political movement, as Judas might have seen it. It wasn't a political movement, not in the way we think of it, but Judas hoped to benefit from whatever Jesus was up to. And we also know that Judas, in the moment that he wished that he could have done the next right thing, obviously, remorse overcame him after Jesus' death and all of that, and Judas takes his own life. And so we know that there was a remorse. That means that there was a conscience there, and Judas probably, in some sense, wanted to do the right thing, but he had trained his whole life in his looking for the quick and easy way to personally benefit from Jesus rather than being honed and formed as a person into Jesus' ministry and into Jesus' likeness, Judas was looking for a way to benefit from Jesus. And so he stole. He was a thief, basically. And he went the quick way. I can't get anything else out of this, so for 30 pieces of silver, I'll bargain for Jesus' life. Judas had prepared for that by the way that he had lived his whole life, I believe. Just a few snapshots of who he was and how he acted leading up to that moment. And it brings up that quote again, that in the moment of crisis, we will not arise to the occasion, the need, heroism, whatever. We will not arise to that, but we will default to our training. It's the way we live in the little things that make us able to step up in the moment of crisis when something huge is being asked of us. And let me just say that Jesus is asking of each one of us. During this week, we remember this so well that he's asking each one of us to take up our cross and to follow him. You know, he said, where I am, there my servant will be also. And so Jesus, when he talked about us carrying our cross and following him, Jesus knew that if we were going to be like him, we would also carry a cross and follow him in serving and glorifying the way of God in the world, to bring the world to realize who God is. But it's a way of a cross. And what I want to say is this, that Jesus paved the way for this little comment that I'm working on today, and that is that our habits in the little things every day, every week, every hour, in the little things, they build towards what we ultimately are and what we're able to do in those big moments when God calls us and when God needs us to step into an opportunity to serve him. Why do I think that's true? It's not because of some positive thinking, philosophy or something like that. But Hebrews chapter 5 verse 8 says that Jesus learned obedience by the things that he suffered. Now, if Jesus learned obedience by the things that he suffered, it can't be talking about the cross, because that's the culmination of all of his obedience throughout his life. The cross is that critical moment when God said, this is what we've always planned on. This is what I've always meant to do, to die for the life of the world. And Jesus, to be prepared for that, was being prepared all the way through. Jesus, I think, in school was probably tempted to lie when he went to rabbi school. When his folks had him doing chores, I think that he was tempted to not do those chores. I think when the little girl was sitting across the classroom in school, said, hey, meet me out back, and there were sexual connotations there, Jesus had to say no. He had to struggle with who he was. And he learned obedience by the obedience to go to the cross, by the little things all along the way that made him and built his character into the person that he was. He didn't just drop into this world, everything being fixed, that he was going to do this because he was some sort of robot, okay? Jesus learned, Jesus grew in favor and stature, or in stature and favor with God and man. That says early in his ministry, early in his life, early in the temple. And so, anyway, the point is that Jesus grew. His obedience built on itself to the point where when the cross came, Jesus was willing, even then, to struggle with that in the garden, but to be obedient to what God was calling him to do. And that's what God's calling us to do. Second Peter chapter 1 verses 5 through 8 is a great place. And I really challenge you to go and read that, where he's calling us to grow in attributes that will make us the kind of people who will hold on to God's promises no matter what. And it takes us adding upon uh, by grace, yes, but by grace also being freed to grow and to not stay where we are, but to go on and grow and become the habitually obedient people that God has called us to be. On this day, when it's kind of silent in Jesus' story, we think of um, that moment where it's the calm before the storm, and we have to settle in those moments in our life, the calm before the storm, where we decide. And we decide based upon our training, upon our habits, whether we're going to be obedient to God or not. And I pray that God's blessings will be on you as you determine to be an obedient servant of God in the ways that He's called you